It'll be a long day in the morning before I let them dump garbage in my backyard.
I know. Mr. Wright, we're not talking about dumping garbage. We're talking about...
Well, garbage is garbage wherever it is.
Oh, you said it.
I just hope I'll not come up. To me, it's a lot of nuisance expense. I guess I'm going to put it down by the old barn down there. They're not stuff.
Hey, yeah, it's all right for you. You don't live anywhere near it.
Folks, we're not going to get anywhere by yelling at each other. Please, folks, please. Now then, it's pretty obvious to me that not everyone here knows exactly what a sanitary landfill is. If we're going to vote on a referendum to acquire land for one, we ought to understand it better. I suggest we let our engineer, George Taylor, give us a better idea of what we're talking about. George?
Maybe you'll throw some light on it.
Let's start by saying what a sanitary landfill isn't. It isn't a dump. It isn't even a 30-second cousin to a dump. For generations, we've had dumps simply because we didn't know what else to do with unwanted waste materials. So we dumped them, or burned them, and left them. We took our dumps for granted. Their wind-blown litter, noxious odors, flies and rats and other disease-bearing vermin. But as long as the dump was on the other side of town, away from our house, we didn't worry too much about it. Now, I'd like to set something else straight. You often hear the term landfill. A landfill is not a sanitary landfill. Usually, a landfill is some low spot, like an old quarry, where refuse is dumped to fill it up. And until the desired level is reached, the landfill, like the dump, is dirty, smelly, and completely undesirable, both from a health and a safety viewpoint. Again, we didn't worry too much about it, as long as there was some little distance between it and us.
I think, too.
Why don't we simply cover the old dump over and get one farther out? Seems to me that's the cheapest thing to do.
That wouldn't be solving our problem at all. We'd simply be putting it off. How long can we continue to move our dumps farther out? Think of this for a moment. Facts of Life Department. As populations continue to grow and communities to spread, we not only have less and less land for dump sites, we have more and more waste materials to get rid of. It's estimated that by 1986, 265 million people in this country will produce 2.4 billion pounds of refuse, or 9 pounds per person every single day. That's more than twice the production of the middle 60s. What are we going to do with it? Where are we going to put it? A lot of people have been facing up to that problem, believe me. Hundreds of communities across the country, particularly those with populations under 50,000, have faced up to it and are sure they found the answer: sanitary landfill.
Yeah, but from what I hear, every place they put one in, they have a lot of opposition.
They did, until people fully understood what sanitary landfill was all about.
It's still pretty new, isn't it? How do we know it isn't some egghead idea that won't work out in the long run?
Well, sir, it's been working for 30 years. That's a pretty good record, isn't it? Sanitary landfill was developed by our federal government. It was part of the Green Belt Environmental Development Program. The government urged that it be part of the planned growth of every township with a disposal problem. It's been an accepted reality since 1940.
Folks, I think it makes more sense to let George tell us about sanitary landfill in more detail before we start raising objections.
Okay.
Go ahead, George.
In its simplest terms, sanitary landfill is... Here, let me quote how the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare describes it. Sanitary landfill is a method of disposing of refuse on land without creating nuisances or hazards to public health or safety, by utilizing the principles of engineering to confine the refuse to the smallest practical area, to reduce it to the smallest practical volume, and to cover it with a layer of earth at the conclusion of each day's operation or at such more frequent intervals as may be necessary. In other words, it's an effective, low-cost, hygienic method of refuse disposal involving dumping, spreading, compacting, and sealing with dirt each day, or even more frequently. And we have to admit its importance when we consider its benefits. No disease-carrying pests, no odors, no pollution of the air, soil, or water, no fire hazards, no leftovers, no dangerous scavenging, and no high initial investment or high maintenance costs.
Hold on. You say no high initial investment or high maintenance cost. I have a feeling my wallet's going to be involved in this somehow.
To a degree. In our community, it would mean about $3 per person per year. And that's not much, especially when you compare it with the land and equipment needed to operate a dump.
But the dump doesn't cost me anything.
Oh, yes, it does. The cost of your dump is hidden in your general taxes. And then there's that other cost, the cost of air and water pollution. With sanitary landfill, your only basic requirements, and I'm talking now of cities like ours, up to 50,000, are a piece of land, a tractor with an all-purpose bucket, and an operator. As for the land itself, submarginal property, like the piece we recommend, is fine.
Fine, except that I can see it from my back porch. Why don't you put it in that swamp out on Old Mill Road?
Because the quality of the soil and the location of the land are very important. You can't put it in low, swampy areas. It might pollute the water table.
Well, how about that back piece on the old Judson property?
Don't worry, we've checked it out. Too close to the river, water pollution again. And besides, it's hard clay, and that cracks. And cracks let in flies and even rats.
But how about the wells? Aren't there wells near the property you have in mind?
Not too near. Besides, they're deep enough to be free of any seepage. If there were a well nearby that wasn't deep enough, we'd dig it deeper.
You're sure set on that particular piece of land, aren't you?
We are, because it's ideal. It poses no health problems, and it's sandy loam. That means it's easy to compact into a tight seal. Believe me, we've gone over every possibility, and we've been guided by local and state health authorities who agree with us. The piece of land we have in mind gives us exactly what we want. Easy access, good drainage, and no chance of water pollution.
Okay. So we put in this sanitary landfill. We dump the garbage and cover it up.
Every day, or oftener.
Okay, well, every day. But sooner or later, you're going to run out of space, aren't you? And we'll be in the same old merry-go-round again in another year or so, right?
Nowhere near it. Here are some figures. About 1 acre per year per each 10,000 people is recommended for our soil and water conditions. A community like ours would need about 3 acres a year. A 20 or 21 acre tract would do for about 7 or 8 years. But we have more land available right next door. Our sanitary landfill could be good for a long, long time. Maybe 15 or 20 years.
Just the same, I know one thing. Property values are bound to go down. Well, that'll drag down the value of my place.
And here's something you've got to remember. This is not lost land. It'll never be an eyesore, a hazard, as with a dump. It's reclaimed land. And on it we can build parks and other recreation areas, playgrounds and the like.
Sure. In fact, we've even talked about it as a great football field for the new high school when that goes up.
Exactly. And you can be sure that even if the value of this property doesn't go up, as it well could, it will certainly never go down.
But in the meantime, there's all that garbage out there. And you can't tell me that it won't attract flies and rats and give off bad odors.
Yeah.
Remember what I said. This is not just landfill, where the refuse is used to fill up a low spot and left uncovered until the spot is filled. This is sanitary landfill, where the refuse is never left exposed beyond the end of the working day. In most cases, it's never exposed for more than 8 hours. This simply doesn't give flies time enough to breed, and it doesn't give rats time enough even to locate the fill. The dirt cover is at least 6 inches deep, and this is beyond the rat's burrowing ability. But wait, let's start at the beginning, so I can show you exactly why this method is so sanitary. One of the reasons the piece of land we've selected is so ideal is that it's somewhat hilly. It gives us a natural slope to spread the refuse against. The refuse will be dumped near the base of the slope. The truck moves away. Now, with its bucket raised and open, the loader cuts the pile of refuse down to a manageable depth for demolition. The tractor rides back and forth over the refuse, pressing it down or compacting it. After the refuse is thoroughly compacted, it is worked against the side of the slope to form a ramp of no more than 30 degrees, where additional compaction takes place. The material is now about 1/8 its original density. This procedure is repeated throughout the day. Clean earth for the daily cover is picked up at the base of the ramp and spread in a smooth 6-inch layer up the ramp, sealing off the daily deposit of garbage and refuse. The tractor always works up the ramp. These first steps are repeated day after day until the desired level is reached, usually one that forms a fairly straight line with the crown of the slope and the trench that was formed by picking up the fresh dirt. The top and final cover is then dressed with 2 feet of clean earth, also picked up from the base of the ramp. It is transported over the refuse in the multi-purpose bucket, creating additional compaction. You'll get some idea of the force of this compacting action when I tell you that the multi-purpose bucket, loaded with earth, exerts a ground pressure of between 40 and 50 pounds per square inch. And that's a considerable amount of ground pressure. Final cover is stockpiled at the top, and as the completed layers, or cells, of compacted refuse build up, this soil is spread evenly outward across the surface. Now, if our land were flat, without hills or depressions, we'd scoop up a mound or ramp of dirt of our own to work the refuse against. If we had a high, long slope or ravine, we'd deposit the refuse at the base, compact it, and cover as with the first method. In many of the larger landfills, a combination of equipment is often called for. For instance, a packer, a heavy machine with pleated wheels for exceptional demolition and compaction power, intended for use with 2 or more other machines. In cases where the cover dirt must be imported from elsewhere, elevator scrapers of various sizes have proven to be great for loading, bringing in and spreading, and finally compacting the cover material. Oftentimes, these machines work in combination with dozers that spread and compact the refuse while the scrapers handle the dirt cover. But whatever the equipment, or combination of equipment, whatever the condition, the appearance is one of carefully leveled, cleaned soil. Sanitary landfill is the only proven method for converting a community's waste materials into something other than a dangerous, unsightly dump or the fumes of an expensive incinerator. Only sanitary landfill converts it into land that is free from odors and pests, a source of pleasure and profit to the community. More important, It's recommended by sanitary engineers and is part of our national health program. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the case for sanitary landfill.
Any comments, folks?
You know, I think we ought to adjourn until tomorrow, and then go out and take a look at where that new high school football field will be.